you ever doubted the goodness of God in your life, I pray for you. I can't doubt the goodness of God for me. I thank God for my family, my wife seated in there. Jonathan, you didn't introduce your mom. You left it for me. Very, very sharp guy. He changes things fast. But God has been good, very good to me. My wife of 49 years. Stand up there. I said 49 years. If you ever doubted the goodness of God, I leave it up to you. I can't doubt it. That's God's doing. We were both young when we got married, and then the journey has continued until to this day. The enemy would have had it otherwise. And he has worked hard, fought hard to destroy this family. But we are here. And so, based on the message I have for you, there is a song that Moses wrote. Who wrote? Moses. And I will start with that, so you should know that that's where we will end, with Moses' song. You know, when he led the children of Israel out of Egypt, God took them through the long route. Instead of them crossing immediately from Egypt across to the other side of Canaan, a journey that would have taken them 2 weeks, he led them the long route, until they came face to face with the Red Sea. You remember that story? I will go over that. That's what I wrote about in my book, which you see outside. When they came face to face with the Red Sea, they didn't know what to do. They had not learned to swim. They didn't know whether they could swim across. And behind them came Pharaoh, leading his whole army of horses and chariots and charioteers, pursuing God's people. When he came face to face with the Red Sea, God said, Moses, take your staff, your rod, stretch it across the sea. And he did. And all that night, the wind blew. But David, the psalmist, says, no, it was not just the wind. God breathed or sneezed, the actual word, sneezed on the Red Sea when he saw the enemy pursuing his people, and the waters parted. Stood with a wall on this side, a wall on this side, so his people could walk across on dry sand. Then they came to the other side of the Red Sea. When all Israel had crossed over, Then Moses stretched his rod over it, the sea again, and that day the wind blew and the waters clashed in, filled that gap. All the armies of Israel, the horses and their riders, perished in the sea. So Moses sat down. Exodus 15. Exodus what chapter? 15, verses 1 on. Exodus 15. Moses wrote a song and taught Israel to sing. Miriam leading the group to sing. The horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. They looked and the bodies of the Egyptians were washed to the other shoreline of the sea. I will sing to the Lord because he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he has thrown into the what? Into the sea. Can we sing that song? This side, you will say to me, the horse. Oh no, I didn't hear you. The horse. And the rider. Together, he has thrown into the what? Into the sea. That's a big song. The whole book of Exodus. I summarize it with those words. The horse. And what? No, you don't understand yet. I want you to shout. The horse. And the rider. He has done what? Thrown them into the sea. They have perished in the sea. I will dwell there until you understand what I'm talking about. One night, not too long ago, I was studying in my office. I don't know whether I'm the one who called, or my Pastor Jonathan called me. So I said, son, how is it going? And he didn't sound as strong as he is many times. I said, what's going on? He said, no, things are not going as I would like them to be. So I said, let us pray. And we prayed. When I knew we were coming here, I had no idea that I would be looking at the faces of people like I'm looking at you right now in what is called a relevant church. So as I look at you right now, the horse, the what? The horse. The horse and the rider, he has thrown into the what? Oh. The enemy has been defeated. Oh. That's what Moses meant here. The enemy that is pursuing God's people has perished, drowned into the sea. When I look at you, sister, again, and you are sitting right there, the horse and its rider, he has thrown into the sea. That's why you are sitting right here. The enemy would have destroyed you. He was pursuing you, always pursuing you. But he has the enemy, and whatever he is riding, I said, the devil is always riding on something. No, you didn't hear that, did you? The devil is always riding on something. Either he's riding on jealousy, envy, debt, divorce, division, on something to discourage God's redeemed people. But no, he will not allow that to happen. He will throw the one who is riding and into the sea. I'm not going to stand here and tell you many stories about myself. You have heard more stories about me than I could tell you from this man. When I came home this time, my grandson, Jonathan Zion, came up to me and said, Dad, how old, Grandpa, how old were you when you really wore your shoe? So I said, what do you think? What do you know? He says, my dad says, you were way up there in age, in your early 20s maybe, before for you to wear a shoe. Is that true? So I said, no, son, grandson, you listen. When I grew up, I had more feet than shoes. But now, I have more shoes than feet. There's a stack of shoes that ever since I bought them, I have not even tried to wear them yet. I wish I had more feet to wear those shoes now, but no. That's how far God has taken me. To this far. The enemy has pursued you all your life, and he is still pursuing you. But Moses declared victory. I don't know if you understand me. When they just crossed the Red Sea, they were far from their destination. Are you listening? They were far from their destination. But he wrote the song of victory. I will sing to the Lord because he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. Even though the journey is not over yet, but God has triumphed. Are you following me? You got to sing a song of victory even before you reach your destination. You wait until you see all the things that you are hoping for in life before you can say, thank you, Lord. No. You're missing it. Shout victory now. Even before you see what God has in store for you. But the enemy has already been defeated. I could tell you stories and stories of God's victory. But in the book that you will see back there, there's every chapter, 14 chapters of the book of Exodus. 40 lessons, major lessons, but there are many lessons under each one of God's leading and guidance in the lives of his people. Did you know The whole book of Exodus, when God took Israel out of Egypt, they could have taken a short route, 2 weeks, and they would have been in the promised land. But God took them through the long route. And he gives the reasons why. He said, if the people should meet and encounter war, these people are unprepared to fight. They have not learned the tactics of warfare. So I will take them the long route. I'll teach them many things before they inherit the promised land. Sometimes, and many times, God will take you a long route before you reach your destination of success in life, because you have not learned well some lessons. Are you following me? Really? You will wonder, why have I not reached my level of success this far? It's because some lessons that you need to learn, you have not learned. And in the whole book of Exodus, he taught them 40 different lessons, but many more, to help them understand what life is all about. He taught them about details, because in slavery they had not learned to take note of details in life. He taught them about patience. He taught them about intensity. How to intensify your efforts when you want to do something. The whole experience, different lesson. He took time to teach them. And that's what God does in working with each one of us. I told you that Moses taught them the song, the horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. Even though you have not reached your destination yet, shout victory before you see victory. You need to read another book of mine on Joshua. Joshua, when they surrounded the walls of Jericho, Joshua shouted to the people, he said, shout, for the Lord has given you this city. The walls did not come down until they had shouted. You didn't know that. You thought that the walls came down before they shouted. No, they shouted, victory! Victory! And the walls came down. This whole experience of the children of Israel, God taking them out of Egypt, God had determined long back with Abraham. So that, when the time came, when they were so oppressed, Joseph had died, his brothers had all died, a new king takes power, they oppress God's people, put them under slave labor. They wearied them down with hard labor. They had multiplied even in slavery. You can multiply under oppression. Always. You live in America here, land of democracy. You don't know what democracy means, because you have never lived in a non-democratic country. That's it. Even when Moses was speaking to them, God is going to take you out, leading you to a land of freedom, a land of milk and honey. They didn't understand that language. They had become comfortable in their discomfort. Yeah, very comfortable in their discomfort. You can be comfortable in your misery and still enjoy life. Think that that is a good life when it is not. It's not even related to good life. That's what God is teaching us in the whole book of Exodus. Somebody puts on a shirt only like this, and then somebody, maybe the wife asks, so why are you dressed up? He's not even dressed up enough because somebody else has put on a suit and something is more dressed up. You understand? You can consider yourself dressed up in whatever you are dressed in today, even though you may not be really dressed up. You know, we are creatures of comfort. We become comfortable even in our discomfort. But God is teaching them lesson after lesson, lesson after lesson that they should learn. The peak of their learning is what Moses summarized there. Now, your pastor said, tell you stories. I said, I may be brief, but if there's anything God would have us as grown-up people is tell more stories about where you came from, where God picked you up. Never hide that from your children. Because if they are going to appreciate life, they must know where you came from. Are you following me? Earlier today, I told the group that was here earlier, I said, this is a Memorial Weekend. We honor people who worked in the military, fought for the freedom that we enjoy. My grandfather was a veteran of the First World War. In 1913, he got married. Then in 1914, they conscripted him, recruited him to go into the army. In those days, Malawi had just become a protectorate under the British. They said in 1891, Malawi became a British protectorate. In other words, what that means was the Portuguese and the British were fighting over the territories of Africa, and so the British declared Malawi is a protectorate. It is under us, Britain, 1891. My grandfather is just beginning school. By 1913, he gets married. 1914, he has a firstborn daughter. And then they recruited him under the King's African Rifles. That was the regiment. King's African Rifles. Took him, went up to North Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, and then across to Sri Lanka, or that place where they called Burma. He fought there. Survived the 1918 pandemic. So I grew up listening to war stories of survival. When I became a good size, I wanted to join the army. Any military music would stir me up real hard. If I had been born in this country, I would probably have gone to Vietnam. I was about that age when most men here were about the same age of those that went to Vietnam. But he kept on telling us stories of survival, stories of, fighting and so forth. And he was among the aerialists. There were 3 men from our area that served in the army. But they opened to me about the world outside, that there was a bigger world out there. There were people of different colors that he encountered up in Northeast Africa and the other side of the East. I grew up on those stories. And he stirred me up a desire to see more, explore more of the world. So, I read the book of Exodus over and over again. He says, tell your children, let them tell their children about what you are going through so that they learn. Never withhold from your children the stories about where you grew up, bad or good, that will help them to shape up in life. They will avoid the mistakes that you probably made or went through. They will seek for a better world. I liked it when my grandson Zion asked me, said, tell me about shoes, when you started wearing shoes. I said, you did a good job in telling them stories about that, because they should never take shoes for granted. Are you listening? Yeah. They must know that the beginning was different. No shoes, no pants like these, only short pants, when all others are wearing long pants. Lessons, Tell your children so that they know and learn from what you went through. The book of Exodus, interesting. One of my discoveries is from Exodus 1, when God showed up to Moses. Say, go, lead the people out of Egypt to a land of milk and honey. Up to the last chapter. Did you know, from the day they left Egypt to the day they camped by Mount Sinai and hear God speak from heaven, before all of them, they heard God talk. I am God. I am the one who led you out of Egypt. They heard the mountain thundered, the Mount Sinai thundered, smoke and so forth. They heard God speak loud voice. It had been only about between 40 and 57 days from the moment they had left Egypt. Very scary. Short period of time, and God had spoken everything to those people that he needed to speak to them so they could be a people on their own. If you hear that they spent 40 years in the wilderness, it was 40 years after that they had heard God speak audibly to them. Even the 10 Commandments, when God spoke audibly to them, it was a different generation that listened to God. Within 40 years, that generation died in the wilderness. The generation that was born in the wilderness is the generation that stood face to face with the promised land, like a cross there. And when Moses bade them goodbye, you read the last messages of Moses to his people when he reminded them, be faithful. The God who took you out of Egypt has been faithful to you. He has carried you on eagle's wings. He has protected you all the way. Never forget this God. When Moses said that they were within eyesight of the promised land, and then Moses walked away to die on the mountain. But soon after that, they lingered 40 years round and round and round. They had not learned the lessons well. The lessons that God taught his people were simple, obvious lessons. But it's hard to learn sometimes when you don't understand your circumstances. When you don't process things around you, you may never appreciate what you are exposed to, what you are learning. I do not know about you. Each Sunday when you meet in here, you come to worship here. You hear the preacher stand up here, either Pastor Scott or Pastor Bilima here, or any other preachers teach here. I do not know what it is that you walk out of this door with in your heart that will help you shape your life, prepare you to meet your God, prepare you for the tough days ahead of you. But each time, God is speaking to you. Each time. So, the Song of Moses. I wish, oh Lord, help me. I wish you could understand what Moses meant. You know, the most powerful thing is this. This book is a marvelous book. Me, I enjoy reading this book a lot. Exodus 15, that's the Song of Moses that he taught Israel to sing. When I go to the end of this book, the last book, Revelation, chapter 15, Exodus chapter 15 is way back here. I go to Revelation chapter 15, and John, the Revelator, he is sitting alone on the island of Patmos. And the vision, God opens him the heavens. He sees heaven opened, and he looks. He says, I looked, and it was as if I was seeing a sea of glass. And the multitudes of God's people, redeemed from all nations of the world, were standing on that sea of glass. Then he says, and they sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. Oh. They sing the song of who? What song is that of Moses? The horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. These are God's redeemed people from all nations of the earth. They are standing before God, redeemed from this earth, no more to be touched by death or sickness or sorrow. They are redeemed. They are standing before God, and they sing the song of Moses. The same song Moses wrote. The horse and the rider he has thrown where? Come on, shout it with me. The horse and the rider he has thrown where? Into the sea. Somebody will shout this tomorrow. The horse and the rider. I told you. I don't know, you heard me. The devil is always riding on something. You didn't hear me now. Come on. You didn't. The devil is always riding on something. Something. Jealousy and hatred, divorce, debt, and what have you. Riding on something to destroy his people. So you become discouraged all the time. You worry, you come to worship here and you worry about your debts and so forth. You can't be free enough because he has loaded you over. He's always riding on something. Thank God. The song said, what did he throw in the sea? The horse and the rider. The rider is the devil himself. The horses are all those problems that you encounter here. But they are all going to perish. He has triumphed. Praise God. He has triumphed. They sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. That one is the Moses because the Lamb, Jesus Christ, was the champion who made it possible that the enemy should be drowned. There was a time, man, when the enemy rode high, wanting to destroy this ministry right here. So that we feared, will that ever exist still? And so forth, Pastor Scott. But now as I see you sitting here again, I can say, the horse, come on, the horse and the rider, he has thrown into the sea. Here you are. Still 2 services. Woo! Come on, shout now. The horse, the rider, into the sea. My. Ooh, wait. Man. Yeah. You don't understand, man. Hey, we are here because the horse and its rider, he has what? Cast into the sea. We are standing in God's victory over the enemy. Let me tell you, the God of Abraham, many people don't understand. He says, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The covenant-keeping God, the promise-keeping God. When we're talking about the children of Israel here, 500 years before, when he called Abraham and said, Abraham, I will bless you. Your tribe is going to increase, be many. But your descendants are going to be slaves for many years. But I'll be with them. And guess what? I have money saved up for them. I have money saved up to help them. So when later the descendants are working as slaves in Egypt on minimum wage, God's budget is intact out there. Go read Genesis 15. You will see God said to Abraham, they will come out of that slavery with much wealth. And silver and gold, what have you. And the Israelites left Egypt loaded with thousands and millions of money. All that they would need for a whole lifetime. The budget, God's budget for building the tabernacle in the wilderness. Go study that and research it and find out how much money, how much in millions of dollars in nowadays that money was. And they got it from where? From the Egyptians. They just released the budget. God had said that to Abraham. You're sitting here, you think you are poor. You're not poor. You are poor in faith. But God has all the resources for whatever you might need. Never worry. The horse and the rider, he has thrown into the sea. Thank God Almighty, I am free. Free at last. Thank God, free.